Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again with another ACOTAR series book review. Today I'll be reviewing book 4, a short book closer to a novella length entry in the overall series. This one is A Court of Frost and Starlight, and again that's by Sarah J. Maas. This took me just a couple days to read through. Side note, I actually read most of this and finished it while waiting for jury duty selection. Anyhow, before I get more into the review, if you like what I'm doing on here, it would mean a lot if you could like, subscribe, share my content, and so on. If you haven't already, that is. Also, this will be spoiler-free for the first few minutes, and then I'll shift into a more spoiler-filled discussion. So, without any further ado, here we go. A Court of Frost and Starlight was the fourth book published in Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This book was first published by Bloomsbury Press in 2018. It continues the story of the Archeron family and our lead characters interacting with the fairies, the high fae, and the magical peoples of Prythian. Coming right after the third book, pretty much a conclusion, or the third book, which was pretty much a conclusion to a tight narrative trilogy and the story of a war that our main character and her sisters encountered in this new magical world. Now that many of those plot lines of that trilogy have been resolved, this book tells a short, sort of holiday-themed story in which the characters are recovering from the events of those first three books, and where we, the readers, also get a couple teases for what might be coming in the future. As I said, this was a holiday-themed book. The holiday our main characters are celebrating is basically Christmas. It's the winter solstice holiday is what they call it, and the characters spend the majority of these 200 pages going around town trying to think of good presents to buy each other. So yeah, very much a Christmassy book. I think this is easily the weakest of the first 4 Sarah J. Maas books that I've read, but I think it's also pretty harmless, sets out to accomplish a certain mission, and I suppose it does that. It sets out to give us a snapshot of our new found family, our main cast celebrating a holiday with the shadow of the recently concluded war looming over everything. There's some intrigue with one character who has distanced herself from everyone else, and even by the end of this story, her particular storyline and trauma response is left unresolved, though Maas gives us a brief 2 to 3 pages inside her head. Aside from that bit of intrigue and drama around that character, there are only really a couple other things I can recall that ultimately matter that much, or seem like they'll matter in the grand scheme of things. For one, someone is out horse riding at one point in the book, and they see a shadowy thing in the forest, I guess alluding to the fact that more darkness, more evil things are coming, but that's a really brief, kind of simple scene, so that might be something, who knows. And then we also do learn that there's 3 of these secondary, tertiary characters and leaders from the war in the previous book, and they're sort of these outsiders. We learn that they have this kind of roommate situation and alliance going on, so I feel like that kind of group, I found that intriguing and promising as far as what might come of them, how they might help or hinder upcoming conflicts and whatever. And I guess there are certain military factions disgruntled with kind of the more progressive policies they're being forced to adapt, while at the same time they're all still dealing with communal kind of grief over all the friends that they lost, and members of their armies that they lost in the war. So I suppose all of those things are in this book to set up exciting things for the future of the series. But again, all of that gets really kind of buried under the snow, but buried within the majority of the story, which, as I mentioned, is just a nice slice of life in this magical city, a city so important to the series and to our main characters. I will say that I do really appreciate how this book built out the character of the city itself and the setting. We've been told for a couple books now how beautiful and great and peaceful this place is, but this book we actually get to enjoy and kind of live in the city with the characters. And so I feel like Maas actually shows me more reasons to also appreciate the setting here, as opposed to everyone just talking about how great it was or how great it is. Some of the dialogue is cute and funny throughout. One of the sex scenes is a little steamy, but yeah, I can't really say much more about this book. It's a nice story about Christmas shopping in a magical world and in the aftermath of a war. That's about it. So that should do it for the spoiler-free section of this review, but now I'll be jumping into spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, thank you so much for watching. If you want to read these books, I hope you enjoy them. But yeah, thank you and bye. Here's your spoiler warning. Okay, so I do want to zero in on a few specific things here, but I really don't have that much else to add to what I've already said. Returning specifically to Nesta, though, I think structurally the book revolves around this question of, will Nesta come to Solstice dinner or not? Knowing through some of my friends and whatnot that the next book is all about Nesta, this book does build my excitement more for that book. I found Nesta intriguing in the last couple books, and I continue to find her very interesting. And I love this whole idea of how even though Feyre and even Elaine to a lesser extent, even though these two sisters have been able to sort of recover from their traumas within and with the help of their new Night Court family, I like that Maas is showing us that what worked for those two sisters is definitely not working for Nesta, and if anything, being around her loved ones almost makes Nesta's trauma worse or more unbearable. Again, though, this book only kind of teases this idea, but I'm hopeful that we'll get to really explore that in the future of the series. I guess I should also say, while I was excited to see Rhys and Tamlin speak a couple times, at the end of the day, I'm not sure their conversations really accomplished or changed much about how I feel about either of them. It was sort of, or it felt sort of just like Maas checking in on Tamlin a couple times for us, but to no real effect other than just letting us see how miserable he is. And then another scene that I kind of enjoyed, Lucien showing up with presents. It was interesting enough. I really like the new friends that he's found with Vesa and Jorian. Sounds like a fun group. I also feel like Rhys and Feyre are a little bit too critical of Lucien still. I'm still not exactly sure if I understand that, and I'm wondering if that's all kind of wrapped up in how I also feel that Lucien was robbed of any purpose or heroic moments in the previous book. Maybe let's call for justice for Lucien, right? But yeah, anyway, the rest of the story is Christmas shopping and or setting up an art studio in school, which I guess is a big part of this book too. And all of that, honestly, I found most of these scenes inconsequential at best and boring at worst. I did, however, really enjoy the scene where Feyre and Elaine they're in like a weaver's shop, and the woman describes this intriguing material and pattern she's been working with, and how that reflects what a lot of Valaris is probably experiencing in terms of grief over what was lost in the war and the hope of the good things to come. I thought Maas did a really nice job kind of using this scene in the shop to convey a more thought-provoking message, and to kind of help us readers zero in on what Maas is trying to say with this book. But yeah, I've spent most of this review talking about 50 or so pages that I enjoyed, whereas the rest of the book is really how many diamonds and gems should we get Amren, or wow, we have a lot of documents to sift through on our desk, but at least we have enough money to buy properties like an art studio or a fancy new estate on the river, or I think I'll go paint in this ruined building because I'm not quite ready to paint in a large group around a bunch of other artists yet. All of which is just, that's the majority of the book, and it's all just kind of meh, whatever. Another positive, though, I do like getting more time with third-person limited chapters for Mor and Cassian. I thought their inclusions here really help spice things up, or at least a little. And speaking of kind of all the friends, kind of going back in the negative direction, I'm not too crazy about the sort of flirting between Asriel and Elaine. It seems just a little bit weird and too like puzzle, or a little too weird and like cookie cutter perfect that all three Archeron sisters are all paired up with one of the three Night Court like brothers. I'm not really the biggest fan of that, and I'm. It seems like that's the direction things are going. I'm hoping that it doesn't go that way though. Anyway, that about does it for this review. Again, not much to say about this one. Definitely not as much as I had to say about book 3. It's fine, and I can't think of any reason why anyone should skip it. But if you haven't read it, and you're like coming up on it or whatever, definitely don't expect anything mind-blowing. If you have read it, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this book down below. All that said, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.